But LA traffic as we know it is keeping them from getting here. First, I'd like to bring up our sponsors who are providing lunch for you today. First, everyone give a round of applause for Nicole Romero from the Termite Guy.
I guess I should have been up here, huh? Good morning, everyone. Nicole Romero with the Termite Guy. The gal for the guy, of course, and here at your disposal. I come from title and escrow background as well as assisting agents, work from a commercial standpoint as well as residential, and I sought out a company, been in business for 21 years, that was focusing on homeowners association and property management before any type of real estate transaction I could bring to them, because that told me that they could probably handle anything I brought their way. So with that said, the company, the Termite Guy, very credible company, again, been in business for 21 years, doing all of the work. So woodwork as well as all of the treatments from fumigation to local treatments and even heat treatments. So if any of your clients are looking for something that is going to be a little more green, we do have that as an option. But with that said, I think it's just really important to feel comfortable with the company and people that understand what you're doing. So we work directly with investors as well as agents who are working with investors and agents who are investors. So we can handle anything, throw it our way, put me in your phone today, make sure that you have a resource when you're in front of your clients or you step away so you can just handle that and move on. Again, my name is Nicole Romero with the Termite Guy. My cell phone number, put it in your phone today, 310-403-2600. And if you weren't ready, I will repeat it. It's 310-403-2600. I have investors calling me direct from the agent's instruction, and there's a lot of trust involved. I will handle it with care. We try to give it a white glove experience to a blue collar situation. Thank you very much.
And also Nicole has some marketing materials in the back with business cards if you want to stop by. Next, our next sponsor is Ami Adini of Ami Adini Environmental Services. He's going to give you a quick overview of what they do. Everyone give it up for Ami.
Do you hear me well?
Yes.
Without the microphone? Great, because microphone I'm not good with I keep moving it around and then I lose my voice. Anyway, pictures talk much better than me, so I describe to you what we do by a few pictures. We specialize in removal of environmental risks from the transaction. What does it mean? Here is an example, vapor intrusion risk. So we have this property belongs to our client, and there is this cloud of toxic vapor coming from nearby dry cleaners. It's going under the property. They cannot get the loan, and we do the investigation. We give them the report. We clear the property. They gave the loan. Transaction is going through. Here's another example. Again, a prospective investor. They are interested in this property. It's a residential complex. However, there is this cloud, underground cloud, subterranean cloud coming at them from the nearby operation of dry cleaners, and they want to know how it will impact the cost of the property. What will they need to do to invest to repair this problem? So we give them an estimate. In this case, we don't even charge for it because we can jot it down in about 10-15 minutes, give them some numbers, and we give it as a courtesy service, and they can continue with the transaction. Here is another example, very recent one, just in the last couple of months, a property in Santa Monica. This is Santa Monica Boulevard. And in 1995, we removed tanks. It used to be a gasoline station. We removed the tanks. In 1995, they were in this corner of the property. There was contamination. Then it turned out to be a car dealership, and now the prospective buyer, now it's already the owner, is interested in buying it. However, here is where the tanks used to be. We removed the tanks, it was contaminated. There is a residual contamination under the tanks in the properties. They want to know what liabilities they are facing. The regulatory agencies already closed the case. This case is closed. However, they want to redevelop, they want to dig down 30 feet, and there is contamination. They want to know how it will impact the cost-wise transaction. So here is an example of what is under the ground. There is a tank. It has to show a picture of a tank in the ground. We remove those tanks. And there is residual contamination. This is another project that they will have to handle when they get there. So we tell them, okay, give them a line item, say, okay, put 161,000 into your equation and go ahead with the transaction. So now they have a number, they can continue with it. They are not afraid anymore of the unknown contamination, and they can continue with the transaction. So the way we do it is the general tools are, there is a phase 1 environmental site assessment, and where we indicate what the concerns are that they need to worry about or consider, not to worry, but what they need to consider in the transaction. This is the phase 1. We call it recognize environmental conditions. That's what we need to consider when you do the transaction. And if we have any concerns, then we move to the phase 2 where we take the samples. We drill down, we take the samples, and we tell them, yes, no, really you have contamination, no, you don't have contamination. If you have contamination, what you do with it. And then general prices is phase 1 process could be anywhere from $1,800 to $3,000. Phase 2 process could be anywhere from $6,000 to $20,000. It depends on the case. And if you deal with industrial properties, there is more money involved. So that is the essence of our services. We do the phase 1 and phase 2 environmental site assessment. We also do the contamination cleanup. If there is contamination, we clean it up, we remove it away. And most important, or maybe important for you, is we give a lot of free introductory services. We are getting called every other day. We're getting called, what do we do here? What do we do there? I don't mind sharing knowledge that I can share with you. Half an hour discussion on the phone, an hour discussion on the phone. Sometimes it takes a couple of interactions. We don't mind that we go and we help a lot along this line. This is my phone number, my cell phone number. This is our website, and you are welcome to call me or us anytime. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you. Thank you to our sponsors. You'll see more of them. They'll be in the back. They're providing you a really nice lunch, which will be here about 12:30. Now I'd like to introduce our chair, Mr. Christian Grus. He is going to moderate for us today. And also, if we can give a round of applause for Phoenix Thottam. He is our vice chair for our commercial committee. So these gentlemen have been working really hard to bring you some quality information. So everyone, please give it up for Christian.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, for coming. And I just saw you read what we have on the flyer, and you understood what we're going to talk today. And I just want to make a little introduction. So, changing the cities and the role of real estate. In 2009, during the U.S. Mayor Conference, the former mayor of Denver, whose name was Wellington Webb, summarizing the urban challenge of humanity and says, the 19th century was a century of empires, the 20th century of nation states, and the 21st century will be the century of cities. For the first time in human history, the world's urban population has reached and already exceeded 50%, and by 2050, it will be 2/3. As poet and screenwriter Dorothy Parker said, Los Angeles is 72 suburbs in search of a city. In the next 10 years, Los Angeles will undergo a major transformation linked both to population growth effect and the outlook of the 2028 Olympic Games. A different understanding of the geography and history of our territories and cities will prevail in the development of our territories and our cities. In this context, a megapolis like Los Angeles is forced to face paradigm shift in our lifestyle and in the way we design and build our living and working environment, as to create the city of tomorrow that is exemplary in the consumption of all our form of energy and water, and also to be effective in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Some indifferences will no longer be used. Indifference to the soil and land, indifference to the air, the atmosphere, indifference to water biodiversity. Because the sustainable city is a part of an ecosystem that is rebuilding itself. And even more, new buildings will not only have to consume less energy, but also to produce it. Los Angeles, with its population, geography, infrastructure, and economy, is one of the most complex megacities of the world. The city limits covers almost 469 square miles, but Greater LA is 10 times that size. The city's central question is how a city of Los Angeles size and scope can truly be sustainable. As you know, a metropolis is a set of urban units that share significant daily commuting. And the 500 metropolis with more than 1 million inhabitants are producing 75% of the world GDP. The phenomenon of globalization is not a national phenomenon. It is a metropolitan one. It is not the nations that are becoming globalized, but the metropolises are as representative and gateways to all these nations. And you have understood that it's not anymore a scientific debate. It's a political, economic, and health reality where we all are concerned in our real estate activities, no matter which side we are acting from. Thank you. So now I would like to introduce you our speakers of today. So James Butts look like he's a little bit late.
He said he'll be here but between 11 and 11:10.
Okay. So I would like to ask. Sorry. I would like to ask John Mirisch, Mayor of Beverly Hills, to come here, please. Thank you, John. Just take a seat wherever you want. So, the Honorable John Mirisch, Mayor of Beverly Hills, is serving the Beverly Hills City Council since 2009 and already served as mayor in 2013 and 2016. He has formed the Sunshine Task Force aimed at making Beverly Hills into a model for local governmental transparency and public participation. Prior to his devoting to public service, John Mirisch worked in the movie business at Paramount Picture, IMAX, or United International Picture. Now I would like to introduce you introduce you Ron Frierson. Ron Frierson, you can come. So Ron Frierson from the other city. Director of Economic Policy, Los Angeles Mayor's Office. So Ron Frierson served as Director of Economic Policy for the Los Angeles Mayor Eric Gasseti's Office of Economic Development. Ron leads a team that develops economic development strategy and policies for the city's major business sector, including real estate, entertainment, manufacturing, technology, among others. And his presentation today will focus on the evolution of downtown LA real estate development. And now I would like to introduce you Fabian Kremkus, architect from CO Architect, and who is a member of, go ahead please, and who is a member of the American Institute of Architects and an active member of the committees on the environment, deeply involved with issues of global warming and sustainability. Worked nationally and internationally on academic and research facilities, secondary schools, hospitals, and corporate headquarters, sports, and entertainment facilities during his over 20 years architectural career. So now I would like to begin. Mayor from Inglewood is not here. I think we can begin here. Okay, so who's gonna speak first? Normally, John, you be okay to speak first? Yeah?
Sure,
I don't know. Hey, it was working. I give you mine.
Great. You're working? Okay, here we go.
Okay.
So, I'm mainly here to answer questions, but there are a few things that I did want to say. Before I got elected for the first time, which is over 10 years ago, I remember I came to a panel here in which we had a discussion in Beverly Hills about historic preservation. And I remember one of the members, I don't know who it was decrying the fact that there was absolutely nothing to protect any of our buildings. There was a joke in real estate circles that architectural preservation Beverly Hills style was taking a picture of a building before you tore it down. I'm happy to say that since then, it's something I've been pushing for, that we have a Cultural Heritage Commission, and there are over 40 historic properties that are on our list of landmarks. And so things can change through the system of government, and this is one of the reasons that I believe that local government, when done correctly, is the best form of democracy. It's closest to home. It reflects the communities in which we live. And so right now, I understand that from a fiscal perspective, some people in the real estate industry may think it's great that Sacramento tries to impose one-size-fits-all solutions. But at the end of the day, what it would do in most cases is destroy communities. And that, anything like that that takes away from livability and the comfort that people find in their own homes is not good for the region, I would say. At any rate, we continue in Beverly Hills to focus on preserving what we feel is historically valuable, doing a better job of honoring our history and a sense of place, makes it feel more like a home. And again, you know, you're in the business, many of you, I guess some are in commercial real estate, are in the business of selling homes. And a house is more than a home. Home is something that's almost a sacred concept. And in Beverly Hills, what I think is important to us is we feel a sense of connectedness to each other, a sense of community, and that really contributes to that sense of home. And ultimately, I think that's one of the reasons, not just the schools or the fire or the police, that makes our very diverse community, more diverse than people would know, a place that people still consider to be a village. You know, think of it. We joke that we're Mayberry RFD, and my joke is that on our best days, maybe we are. On our worst days, we're Peyton Place in an Ibsen play with a little bit of Shakespeare thrown in. But I think all communities are like that. And you know, in LA County, there are 88 cities, and each city has its own DNA, and people are free to choose what suits them. And I think that's important, to have a variety of choice. It's also good from a resiliency perspective. A professor called Alex Wall correctly stated that resiliency when it comes to an area is also connected to a variety of lifestyle choices. And so we're going to hear about downtown LA, and that may be a place which is extremely appropriate to have a high level of density. But there are also single-family houses are popular, and there's a reason for it. It's because that's something that people like, and so that needs to be part of the mix, I believe, as well. And some of what we see from Sacramento is literally a war on single-family housing. You know, they're using a book by a fellow called Richard Rothstein called The Color of Law to suggest that it's racist and it's immoral. And I can say this from the perspective of my community, which is a little bit unique, in that we're probably the only Jewish majority city outside of Israel. We bought a piece of property for some public works uses last year, and there's still in it a covenant that you can't sell to African Americans or Jews. But yet, as said, our city now is Jewish majority. So things change, fortunately. We've managed to overcome it. There are areas with other ethnicities that like their single-family houses. Ladera Heights actually has a median household income that is higher than Beverly Hills. The reason for that is because we are 50% renters, and so it's important for us to have over 50% renters to create that diversity. And that's another reason, and I'm happy to answer questions about it, why we, and you may hear from Mayor Butts in Inglewood, what they're struggling with. As that community becomes more and more successful, you have some of the negative sides of gentrification there, where people are being displaced. And so we felt in our city it was actually important to have rent stabilization ordinance that actually allowed people predictability who moved into our community to stay there if they wanted to. We're getting pushback, obviously, from some of the apartment owners in many ways, and our goal is to create something very balanced. But we do feel it's important that we have this diverse mix of residents, and that people who move in and contribute so much to our community, again, over 50% of our residents have the ability to stay in our community. And so, from my perspective, and if you want to discuss the overall housing affordability crisis in California, I'm happy to discuss that. I've written a lot. My position is diametrically opposed to Sacramento, that feels that cities are at fault. I say Sacramento is at fault. I think the word feckless, if you look in the dictionary, you'll see Sacramento. One of my friends who is the editor of one of our local newspaper described Sacramento as high school. There are 200 housing bills now. There's not one single bill that deals with the pension issue that's threatening the ability of cities to pay for services, the ability of the state to do anything. There's not one single bill that deals with an issue that a lot of communities face, the abuse of disabled placards, for example, not one. So I think Sacramento, unfortunately, is kind of like high school. That may be generous. I might go a few grades lower, and unfortunately, we're stuck with that. So my solution in general is to have more local. And I think when you look at some of the studies done by, for example, Fernando Guerra at Loyola, which shows that 10% of the people have trust in Washington, and maybe 12 have trust in Sacramento. And you then ask them if they believe in their communities, and it goes up to like 70%. People care about their own communities, they believe in their communities. And so as a result, what we need probably is to allow more decision-making closer to home. And I think if you would do a ballot initiative asking people, do you want more decisions from Sacramento politicians or more decisions closer to home when it comes to everything from land use to other kinds of policies, I think you'd find an overwhelming yes. So that's what we're dealing with right now in Beverly Hills. I'm happy to ask or answer questions dealing with any specifics. We have a general plan, and you probably know our city fairly well. It's a short walk from here. We're about 35,000 residents. It's been at that level for approximately over half a century. We have some hotels, but we haven't had any major new job centers like Santa Monica or some of the other cities have. So we've reached a kind of equilibrium, and so I'd say our focus is on sustainability now and making things work. And with that, I'll let my colleagues here have their say about whatever it is they want to talk about.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Who would
Thank
you
you so
like
much.
to?
So, do anybody have questions now for John, or we're going to make the question after? Okay, after. So, Ron?
Sure. Now I'm going to step to the podium. Is that okay? And guys, I have a deep monotone voice, so hopefully you won't fall asleep. That's what kept me from becoming a college professor, because all my students doze.
And it was on the southbound side.
And Mr. Mayor, you have to be a mayor to be able to speak about Sacramento the way you did, because that's above my pay grade. So I can't say that I agree or disagree, but I can give you a wink. Okay. So is the clicker up here for the? So you should. And so is my PowerPoint set up? And thank you guys. Yes, that's it. I need to go to the. Okay. Let's go to Zoom. Okay, fantastic. So, thank you, everyone. Like I said, I'm Ron Frierson, Director of Economic Policy for the Mayor's Office. On behalf of my boss, Mr. Eric Garcetti, I'd like to thank you again for allowing me to participate on this panel. I'd like to take just a few moments to tell you about some of the great things going on in downtown Los Angeles specifically. Changing cities and the role of the real estate agent, that's something that we're discussing today. That's the topic, but at the same time, you can have this sort of conversation in just about every city across the country. And I think that the acceleration of this type of topic will continue to increase because of federal programs like Opportunity Zones. So this is not exclusive to downtown Los Angeles or to Southern California. What's somewhat unique about downtown LA is the rate of change and development and what I consider as its re-urbanization. A friend of mine, Wayne Rekovich, a prominent developer and a native Angelino, told me to understand real estate in downtown Los Angeles, you have to look at it in 50-year increments. So the first era, let's say, is from 1900 to 1950. The second era from the 50s to the late 90s. And the third era, which we're in now, started in roughly the late 90s. You know, when I first moved to Los Angeles in 2001 from the Midwest, me embracing my new city didn't automatically include me embracing downtown. And this is different from what you'll find in other cities like New York City or Chicago or San Francisco. As a matter of fact, the only time I would go to downtown is if I was going to a sporting event or to some business meeting. So what Wayne said in regards to the 50-year increments, and also Chris Hawthorne, our city's chief design officer, he said that you have to refer to LA in the 3 LAs. And each period saw major changes in downtown Los Angeles. But like I said, the era we're in now is accelerating faster and faster. So this is a diagram of the evolution of downtown Los Angeles. As you can see, the 50-year increments, the population swings, which I'll get into in more detail, and some of the cataclysmic developments that have led to where we are today. So the first downtown era of LA from 1900 to 1950, downtown was the center of banking, law, real estate, and entertainment. You see this is a traffic jam at the corner of 7th and Broadway. Not much has changed, right? That era experienced 2 world wars and a Great Depression, yet the Broadway Theater District created 13 new theaters between the years of 1910 and 1931. And that era saw downtown LA become the cultural epicenter of Southern California. By 1950, the population downtown was 62,000.
Wow.
So please remember that number, because the second era, we see a dramatic shift in the opposite direction. That next 50 years saw massive suburbanization, if that's a word. We had a build out of the interstate highway system. We became a car culture, and many people wanted to get a house with a lawn and a pool, and so we saw the depopulation of downtown LA. And if you also contribute the social unrest of the 1960s, that played a huge role in that as well. So by 1970, went all the way down to 18,000. That's a huge swing. However, things began to change in the late 1990s. There were specific policies and cataclysmic developments that became game changers for downtown. These are some of those game changers as I see them. The adaptive reuse ordinance, which allowed for the repurposing of historic buildings, all while creating new housing. The partnership between Philip Anschutz and developer Ed Roski that resulted in AEG. And that gave us Staples Center and LA Live. The third was the Walt Disney Concert Hall, because that helped to bring culture back to downtown Los Angeles. And I think it was an injection of excitement in downtown architecture as well. Now, although all of these developments were game changers, I think there's something else that we kind of let go overlook. But unless you live in downtown Los Angeles, you know, you can't really appreciate the fact that the Ralph's grocery store on 9th Street and how important that is. If you want to have residents, you have to have a place for them to shop and get groceries. So, as of 2019, right now we're looking at a population of 75,000 in downtown LA, which means we're trending in the right direction when you consider we're down to 18,000 in 1970. And yet we've barely scratched the surface of what's to come. So I'm going to speak about downtown LA's third era in segments. You know, one of the beautiful things about downtown is that there are many downtowns within downtown. We have the historic core, we have Civic Center, we have Little Tokyo, we have South Park, etc. And residential is booming downtown. Okay. So downtown LA accounts for only 1% of the city's land area, but it accounts for more than 20% of LA's housing growth since 2000. More importantly to you guys, the growth attributed to downtown is going to remain at 20% or greater for at least the next 20 years. And we've seen an increase in the number of residential units coming to the market. As of Q4 2018, inventory of residential housing units was about 35,000, with another 12,000 under construction, and we have another 35,000 units proposed. So here are some notable developments. The Grand, a $1 billion Frank Gehry development, slated to be 39 stories, consisting of 400 residences, 20% of which will be affordable, and affordable units, I should say. You guys understand the technical term for that. A hotel and retail shops. It's scheduled to be completed by 2021. Level, 35 stories, 97 extended stay condos, and 206 residential condos. And the Fig Center. If built today, the Fig Center would be the third tallest building in Los Angeles. Standing 975 feet, it would be 66 stories, consisting of 220 hotel rooms, 200 condos, retail, and event space, and a school. The last one I'll highlight is Olympia. Did I go the right way? No. Olympia, a three-tower development. It will be LA Live adjacent and will create another 879 residential units. 4 500-plus unit buildings were slated to be open downtown in 2018 alone. And according to projections you needed, and I already gave the secret away, we're going to exceed 200,000 residents in downtown by 2040. Residential downtown is growing, and the civilian infrastructure is growing. The grocery stores, and we still need to build schools down there. That's all improving. We even have a Whole Foods down there now. It's also one of the few places in LA where you don't need to own a car. The availability of urban transportation options make it attractive to millennials, and they usually don't buy cars the way we bought cars. They like to live in areas with mass transit and urban mobility. Has anyone in this room ridden those scooters? Okay, how many of you fell? You can tell this is between us. Well, I don't blame them, because anything that can help keep us out of traffic, I'm all for it. And for these reasons, I foresee a future where downtown will become more popular for empty nesters, for seniors, and for families. The residential population is expected to exceed the 200,000 mark, and we're going to add another 55,000 jobs. Our city as a whole is going to grow. SCAG, the Southern California Association of Governments, forecasts the city's population to grow to 4.6 million by 2040, and that's just in the city. And that's an increase of 600,000 residents. We're seeing growth in the commercial business sector downtown as well. And this sector really interests me because I'm a corporate site location guy. That's my background. So the corporate migration downtown has been really impressive. Here are some of the significant office tenants that have located downtown since 2014. Since then, there's been over 1.25 million square feet of corporate office space taken downtown. That's a huge number. In many cases, We're not talking about simple cubicles or traditional wood grain office space. We're talking innovative, creative space, which is very common in the tech and entertainment industries. Warner Music Group left Burbank and moved to the historic Ford factory downtown, and with it brought 600 jobs. And tech is booming. Tech is booming in downtown LA. And that's in regards to industry-specific growth. Here are some of the tech companies that have moved to downtown LA or have opened their first LA office downtown. The energy and vibrancy of downtown LA makes it attractive for people who want to live and work and play in a dynamic metropolitan setting. Mass transit and urban mobility are important to millennials, which is another reason why downtown LA is being chosen by many of these tech companies. See, I'm a former CBRE and NAI Capital guy, so forgive the reference. Do we have any other CBRE alum in here? I'm the only one? Okay. So forgive this, okay. So forgive this reference to Cushman and Wakefield, okay? But they released their HQ IQ lessons report out of their Chicago office. In this report, they stress that the need for companies to understand the new labor dynamic. As companies face generational demographic shifts and low unemployment, new priorities are reshaping location strategies, with companies focusing more on proximity to the right people than the cost of relocating. Proximity to skilled talent is now the top consideration for most headquarters moves today, which often means moving to urban environments that boast highly educated and tech-savvy millennial workforce. I'm going to go off script a little bit and let you know that this has been the case for quite some time. And that way, Cushman and Wakefield, they're not saying anything new. Whenever you deal with corporate site location, the number one metric in that decision-making process is the access to labor, the ability to retain and recruit skilled, qualified workers. Companies want locations where amenities are available to its employees, which in turn helps them to attract and retain top talent. And downtown LA delivers on all these points. Options to live close to where you work, again, avoiding traffic, something I'm very much for. Improved public mobility options, restaurants, nightlife, and cultural activities. And the arts district is really, really hot. We're seeing the adaptive reuse of old industrial spaces or the new build-outs for new creative office. Spotify is moving its regional HQ to the arts district, occupying 110,000 square feet. Virgin Hyperloop is there, as well as the LA Clean Tech Incubator. And the LA Convention Center as well is undergoing an expansion that would give it a total of over 910,000 contiguous square feet of exhibition space. Since 2008, LA Live has hosted over 204 million guests, over 15,000 events, including over 2,000 concerts and live events, 93 award shows, 125 movie premieres, and 5 championship celebrations. Thank you, Kobe.
Thank you.
Although the Clippers are doing well. Okay. In closing, this picture is what we're going to see the downtown LA skyline look like in 2030. All of those developments that I spoke of, that's assuming their erection, and there they are for us to see. We've seen tremendous growth in this third era. To some, we'll always be seen as that polycentric metropolitan community, with each of our surrounding cities having their own distinctive characteristics and attributes. Yet and still, downtown LA remains first among equals. There's nowhere in the Southland with a greater number of significant historic buildings. There's no place with such a mix of contemporary architecture. The downtown community plan is coming out later this year and is expected to signal new policies towards relaxing parking requirements for new developments, promote taller buildings, and continue encouraging the growth of the downtown residential community with units that will accommodate family living. It's an exciting time to be an Angelino. You know, I've heard my boss say that LA is not only the westernmost city in the United States, but also the northernmost city of Mexico and the easternmost city of China or Greater Asia. In short, we are a global hub, the busiest port in North America and one of the busiest airports in the world. Due to our global appeal, I believe we have a competitive advantage over other metropolitan areas. Our appeal to global investors and the diversity of our economy will allow us to weather economic slowdowns better than most cities across the country. Our position comes with responsibilities. Mayor Garcetti knows this. This is why he's made the fight against homelessness his #1 priority. This evening, he will speak in detail on these issues along with our continued emphasis on sustainability and environmentally friendly policies. So I strongly recommend that you tune in for tonight's address. And I'm headed over there as soon as we leave here. Thank you for your attention, and I'm sorry to take so much of the mayor's time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ron. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you for all the presentation we just had. And now we're going to have the Mayor James Butts, who is currently serving since 2011 as the mayor of Inglewood in California. So he rose through the ranks of law enforcement in Inglewood during the 70s and the 80s, eventually becoming a deputy chief. He then worked as the chief of police in Santa Monica, California, from 1991 to 2006. So, and I want to add something on my presentations that they made about the issue of today and what you have on the flyer, because I was just speaking about the Olympic Games, but in 2026 we're going to have the Soccer World Cup, and I think it interests you, like you have the Rams in your city. Please come. Thank you.
So, I had to tell you a little thing. You know, I've started in Inglewood in 1972, left as deputy chief in 91, chief in Santa Monica from 91 to 2006 for 15 years. I was 37 when I went there. Then, I actually went to work for the city of Los Angeles at the World Airport System in charge of counterterrorism and public safety. And then I ran for mayor in 2010, and this is my third term. I'm just starting. And the interesting thing is none of those things that I planned to do. And my mother, just before she passed, she told me, she said, Jimmy, she said, your father and I are very proud of the things you've accomplished, but the only thing that really bothered us is you were never able to maintain stable employment. It takes a minute, people take you so serious. But anyway, so we're going to talk a little bit about the city of Inglewood. I come to Beverly Hills quite often these days to talk to groups, and so people don't really know about Inglewood, so I'm going to give you a little history about the city, and I'm going to talk about what you really want to know is, you know, real estate opportunities, right? Yes. All right. Okay, so let me figure this out. Oh, that's not working. Oops. There we go. Okay, so now, will it play a video?
I believe so.
Because I don't see the little
Check
play
that.
button on the bottom.
Let me
Fine, Chris. All right. Okay. Now, is there sound? It's a shame if there's no sound in here. Okay, well, you guys, we're going to skip this and go to the next. From 1922 to 1937, Inglewood was the regional headquarters for the Ku Klux Klan in Southern California. And during that time, people don't know, Inglewood actually extended out to the water in Marina del Rey, which was all marshland. and Inglewood also encompassed the area that is the LA International Airport right now. But the city fathers, in their wisdom, said we really don't have anything to need an airport because there's very low use for it, and we don't have any use for marshland, so they gave that to the county. This is the train station at Florence and Market Street, downtown Inglewood. That station was there until 1970, Santa Fe Pacific Railroad. And this is, Inglewood's past, the Lakers, the Kings. The racetrack did about 46,000 people a day on the average for 6 days a week. The Fox Theater was an icon there, and it was a farming town for the longest. Another thing people don't know about Inglewood, it actually had natural springs and canals that connected us to Venice that flowed through the city. When I left Inglewood in 1991, we had the Lakers, three-peat Showtime Lakers, the Kings, concerts at the Forum, 46,000 people a day at the racetrack. We had the Airport Park Hotel. We had the Sizzler and the Big Donut. And when I came back, all that was left was the Sizzler and the Big Donut. And that was in 2011. So here's history. As I told you about the Ku Klux Klan, in 38 the racetrack opened, in 49 it burnt down, 67 Jen Kit Cook opened the Forum, 1999 the Lakers and the Kings left Inglewood for downtown LA, 2012 the racetrack closed, off-track betting cut those crowds from 46,000 down to about 1,000 a day, because now you could bet the horse you wanted to race at your local track. So if you're in Santa Anita, you could bet at Santa Anita, you didn't have to come to Inglewood. In 2013, we opened a teen center for the South Bay Workforce Investment Board. That was a really great stride forward for us, since we were, in 2011, we were 7 months away from cash flow bankruptcy. We had an $18 million structural deficit. We're down to our last $11 million. And so on a straight line projection, September, October, we wouldn't make payroll. Had to do a lot of things, cut 120 positions, put everybody left on a 10% furlough, outsourced our parking control operation, outsourced our tree trimming operation. It was really tough. In fact, that Christmas, the employees picketed my house, and they passed out flyers with me in a top hat, and they had Scrooge on the bottom, right? And the only saving grace, it was a really good picture. So, in 2014, we had, and starting when I got in office in 2011, we started negotiating with Madison Square Garden. We were going to invest $18 million from redevelopment funds, and they were going to put up $50 million to reopen the Forum. And people said, nobody will come to the Forum anymore. It's too dangerous in Inglewood. It's this, it's that. And today, the Forum is the #1 concert venue in the state of California, #2 in the country, and #3 in the world for booked events. 2015, started negotiating with the Rams. And the local paper, the Times, this is my favorite paper, they said that we were being used as a stalking horse for St. Louis, and the NFL would never come to Inglewood because it's too dangerous, it's too this, too that. In 2016, January, the NFL announced, and if we could have played that video, it would have been really great, that the Rams would be relocating to Inglewood. In 2016, we had the groundbreaking for the Bowl. In 2017, the Chargers in January. 1 year later, they asked if they could join them. In 2017, in June, we opened an E&A with the Clippers to build an 18,000-seat state-of-the-art NBA arena, which is literally across the street from the stadium development. That development, by the way, since it has real estate in it, 70,000-seat NFL arena. It's up to about $4.9 billion in cost right now. It was supposed to be 1.6, but we're not paying for it. So, 300-key hotel, 6,000-seat performing arts theater, close to 1 million square feet of retail and fine dining, 800,000 square feet of grade A office space, 2,500 residential units. It'll be between 2,000 and 2,500. And there'll be various configurations, some single family, some condominiums, and some apartments along the prairie side. 4 public parks of about 26 acres, 2 lakes, and a partridge in a pear tree. It's 3 times the size of Century City, 3.5 times the size of Disneyland for perspective. This is literally a city within a city. It's right underneath the flight path for LAX, and there's about 71 million people come in and out of LAX every year. So the roof of the stadium is a plastic that's electrically excitable, and it can be turned into an advertising board. So usually it's going to have, like in the Rams season, they'll have the Rams logo, but during the games, they'll have title sponsors advertised on that roof. So it's a great revenue opportunity. And this project is with not one dime of city money. It's all private development. In 2018, we were one of the final 3 cities under consideration by Amazon for relocation. We opted out because they wanted huge tax rebates and forgiveness that just didn't make it worth our while. We are negotiating with Verizon to be the first 5G network in Southern California. In fact, I got a call from them today. They faxed their offer, and so it looks like that'll come to fruition. There'll be a Hilton Hotel that opens 111th and Prairie. It's being built right now. In 2020, the NFL Network will move to Inglewood from Culver City. About a month ago, the Girl Scouts of Greater Los Angeles moved their headquarters to Inglewood from Marina Del Rey. Now, you know, once the Girl Scouts come in, it's all over, right? Nobody's going to say you're unsafe anymore, right? And this is the 4th largest piece of their operation in the country. So we'll be serving Girl Scout troops out to Orange County. Now, look at the irony in that we serve Orange County. In 2020, the stadium will open. The Chargers and the Rams will play their first home games here. In 2020, the LA Philharmonic Youth Orchestra will move to Inglewood. They have purchased a building from us on our Civic Center site at a profit of about $1.5 million to the city. We would have paid them $1.5 million to move there. And they're spending $15 million right now for a Frank Gehry designed orchestra hall that will serve youth orchestras. 2022 Super Bowl, it's actually 56, it's not 54, 56, will be held in Inglewood. In 2023, the NC2A Championship Bowl game will be played here. Just got notified that in 2021, WrestleMania is working to have WrestleMania in Inglewood. I'm not a big wrestling fan, but a lot of people get excited about it. In 2024, the Clippers Arena would open. 2026, negotiating for a FIFA World Cup. And 2028, the World Games open in Inglewood. Now, this is a fact sheet in Economic Indicators. This is from 2017. But the long and short of it, the biggest thing about it is that our unemployment rate dropped from 17.5% when I took office down to 4.8%. This is the lowest unemployment rate we've had in Inglewood for 40 years. In fact, there are more people working right now that are Inglewood residents than have worked in the last 40 years. And 3,000 people every day come to work on that stadium site. And every development agreement we have done, the one to reconstruct the Forum, the one for the stadium, the one for the Clippers, we have a 35% local hire goal. Now, we don't always make the goal because there are more jobs than we have people looking for work. But the reality is, usually when you have these big projects, you have the contractors who are not from Inglewood, and they bring in people and workers that they know, and the unions are not populated by people from your city. So we have agreements with the unions. They make our people apprentices, and they get in the ladder, and they don't have to wait and be last. And so, big number, $166 million went to minority-led, women-led disadvantaged businesses and subcontractors in 2017. $166 million. And that's huge for local participation. So if the big donut was built today, this is what it would look like. The new Inglewood. And so that's a rendering of what the orchestra hall will look like, the forum, the development, Sentinel Hospital $100 million upgrade. And so here's how fast things change. In 2016, we had a bright idea that we would put these on our bus benches that the city owned because we said, hey, this is great branding, right? So by 2017, they were outdated because then we had the Chargers and then we had the Clippers coming. So we've stopped worrying about branding right now. And I stole this from Apple, I think. But anyway, the only thing that's changed is in Inglewood is everything. As I told you before, when I took office, had $18 million structural deficit. We were financing water purchases with our capital infrastructure budget, which means we didn't fix anything. Roads, water systems. Our average police vehicle had 150,000 miles on it. Our CAD system was written in 1986. I was on the project team as a captain at that time, so I know that. And our residential sound insulation program had been defunded by law. We lost $37 million. We had a lifetime medical program, which is one of the things that got me picketed, that if we'd made it through 2011 without going to receivership, by 2017 we'd be paying close to, I think, $9 million a year for medical costs for people that didn't work anymore. We'd have gone bankrupt again. So when I came to office, we have a 19,000 trees, it's 22,000 trees now. We trimmed about 1,200 trees a year, which meant that whether you needed it or not, we would trim your tree every 20 years, and it looked like it. And so we outsourced that, and now we do 6,000 trees a year. The topography of the city is so much different, in some ways reminiscent of Beverly Hills. Street sweeping, we had two street sweepers, two street sweeping machines. The machines were 35 years old, and one of the machines was broken all the time. But we were very fortunate because one of the street sweeping people was injured all the time. So we had a symbiosis between equipment and personnel. You guys are missing that. It was like genius. So now we've outsourced, we save $500,000 a year, and we have street sweepers 6 days a week. Now, you won't be able to read this, but some of the things are happening. The NFL stadium, we have Path Villas being built as a senior development for 40 units. Daniel Freeman 221 units of condominiums ranging from 650,000 to 1.2 million. Those are being built right now. We've redone Locust Street Garage. It's not of interest, but we need that for downtown. We just opened, January of 2018, we opened a new senior center, $27 million facility, 35,000 square feet, and it is the largest and most modern senior center in the state of California. So this is what the forum looked like when it was reopened. That Moon Man is our Moon Man because when the VMAs came, they gave us our own Moon Man. Our sound installation program that was defunded is now #1 in the nation. I went to Washington, talked to the FAA, talked to LAWA, and we do about 1,000 homes a year, up from the 200 we were doing when I came to office. Real estate values. Well, this 137 is now 150%. On average, the median price of a home since 2012 has gone up about 150%. Now this is old because as of 2 weeks ago we got another bond rating upgrade. When I took office, our bonds were rated BBB, which is one step above junk or non-investment grade. All right, our latest rating is AA. This was an advisory that they issued in 2016. It basically covers our liquidity. And nobody invests millions and billions of dollars in a city that they think is in risk of receivership, and we were. But as it relates to our unobligated reserves, meaning the money we have in the bank versus our spending plan, we far exceed any city that Moody's rates nationwide. And that's back in 2016 when we had 42 million in the bank. Now we have 53 million in the bank. We could run the city if there was an earthquake and we didn't have access to the Board of Equalization funds. We could run the city for 6 months without a dime from any place else. And there's just some information about one of our upgrades. Our reserves went from as low as 11 million, to 58 million, 420% increase. We've invested heavily in the police department. I think it's close to $11 million. We're replacing every one of those police cars on a 3-year rotation. We're in the year 2. By year 3, every police car in Inglewood will be brand new or just a couple years old. And that has a great impact on people's perception of the city. Because when you talk about branding, the police are the most visible manifestation of government. They're out there 24 hours a day. If they drive banged up, ugly looking cars, it sets an impression of the city. And not to mention, it has an impact on the morale of police officers. Crime rate. 8th consecutive year, the lowest crime in the history of the city. 8 consecutive years. Hollywood Park Casino was redone at a cost of $100 million. It moved to Century and Yukon, to the southern area of the development. Here's some renderings of what it looks like now. This is that senior center that I told you about. This is the Thomas Safran and Associates development. It's at the old Buffalo and Cadillac site. It's Market in Florence. It's 221 units over first floor retail. And it'll be the gateway to the new Market Street that we intend to program to be something reminiscent of Old Town Pasadena. And this is what the Safran building, actually it looks like a Safran building. This is what they do in Pasadena. Grace Park, I told you about that earlier. That's the old Daniel Freeman site, 225 units. It was 600 to 900, now it's 650 to 1.2 million. They aren't even built, and inflation has caught up to them. This is Frank Gary's rendering of what the new youth orchestra program for the LA Phil will look like. That used to be a Security Pacific Bank. Now, how are we going to get people from, I'm on the board of Metro, I'll be chair in June, and we have to figure out how we're going to cover that last mile. The Green Line was programmed to come through Inglewood along the cheapest right-of-way, which is the railroad line, Santa Fe Pacific Railroad line. And one thing that is universal about railroad lines, they don't take you anywhere you want to go. So we have to figure out how to get people the 1.6 miles from the Florence and Market Station to the Forum, Stadium, and the Clippers Arena. And so you can't have it be rail because you'll foul the streets and you'll cause as many problems as you saw with mass transit. So we envision an elevated people mover of some type. I like monorails. And it will go over Market Street, over Manchester, over Prairie, with stops at all the locations. Then we had the bold groundbreaking as Roger Goodell, Stan Kroenke, and myself. And this is an aerial view of what that development will look like. And this is the shopping plaza. This is the most iconic view. It's looking from south to north. I imagine this will be the view that they show on television when they want to tell you you're in Southern California for a different event. This is that electrically excitable roof I told you about. That white structure you see to my left and your right, that's the 6,000 seat Performing Arts Theater. It's nestled into the housing component. And this would have been another movie, but we can't turn the volume on. So with that, I'd be glad to take questions or sit back down. What do you want me to do?
Time for some questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, you want to try it? Scott, I can do whatever you want to do.
If someone could ask a question.
Yeah.
Last question, Phoenix.
Mayor, first of all, fantastic presentation. Thank you. Thank you for that overview.
I liked him as soon as I walked in the door.
So, two questions for you. I know you said Amazon, that didn't go through, and it was one of the 3 finalists. Are there any tech companies that are looking at Inglewood? I know Google just bought the West Side Pavilion and the Spruce Goose Complex, and Facebook and Amazon are both building on the west side. Are any companies talking to Inglewood about possibly setting up a headquarters there, a regional headquarters or offices? That's question one. And then the second question, I know a recent challenge for Inglewood with all this development has been the rising cost of living. There's been a backlash by some of the tenants about the gentrification and about development. If you could talk a little bit about rent control and what's happening in terms of the housing stock and where you see that going, how the city's dealing with those challenges, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, the first question, I thought you were from Madison Square Garden, but no, we're not talking to anybody about tech, because when it comes to tech, you need a large campus. Now, it would be great if we had another block of land, and we do across the street, because they like to set up tech campuses that are pretty much self-contained, but they like them to be near high-end dining and retail for their employees. So I don't see that happening. We're kind of fresh out of large parcels of land, because we're going to have to use the stuff across the street to build a parking structure and or a monorail station. So that's not going to happen. And then the other thing you talked about rents and housing values. Now, interesting thing, in 2008, we had the Great Recession, and I don't know if it was followed by or preceded by the housing market crash because of all those stated income, no documentation loans that affected the financial system. And so what happened was Inglewood property values, which were already depressed, were depressed even further. And we had a number of people buy homes in a development called the Renaissance, and they bought some of those homes for about $600,000 at the peak of the hyperinflated housing market. And we had 50% of those people lose those homes. They were connected, so they were townhomes. So rents were extremely depressed in England. Lowest average rents in the South Bay by far. And that exists to this day, but not to the same degree. So when we started to stabilize the city's finances, investing in roadway reconstruction, tree trimming, got a competent waste hauler, we did a lot of things to make the city more desirable. People wanted to say, hey, houses are a bargain here. So from the end of 2012, prices started to go up. The rental market did not follow like that, because the housing stock has been in such disrepair for multiple family dwellings in general that they couldn't capitalize on the incremental increases. Well, as of about 2014, prices started to pick up. People started asking for more rents. After everybody got on to kind of what we are, then the rent increase started increasing more dramatically, but not that bad. And we're still, to this day, lower average rents than anywhere in the South Bay. But what has happened is investors have said, wait, and they started picking up, like investors picked up those properties in the Renaissance, and they just started buying apartment buildings. And it came to a head for me. Now, Prop 10 failed in California. We had a group called Uplift that was trying to get rent control put on the ballot. They couldn't get enough signatures. And that's interesting in a city that's 65% renters. So the guy that ran against me in the last election, one of his things was that he said he was going to get rent control. And he got like 18% of the vote after Madison Square Garden spent about $1 million to get him elected. So it really wasn't a political issue for us. But I monitor this page in Inglewood. It's called Eye on Inglewood, and you would too if you're smart. And they have about 23,000 people a day that monitor that. And I saw some stories where people said our rent's being raised over 100%. So I called the LLC, they got the managing partner of the LLC, and he confirmed it. And I said, we got to do something about this. So I called him in. We worked out a series of, I'd say, protections for people. Because here's the deal. Bought 2 buildings. The owners owned them for 30 years. The mortgage was de minimis. They come in, paid several million for these 2 buildings, and they have a mortgage to make. And so I could understand why they would want to they were going to only go to market rents. They weren't going to go, but these people were paying $800 for a 2-bedroom. So I explained to him that there's a social cost when you're a housing provider. It's not like you're running a hardware store and selling batteries and cables and oil. You are dealing with people's homes. And so you need to figure this into your prospectus, a way that people can transition if they have to transition, and if they have to leave right away, to give them a relocation allowance. This is the first time I started talking about relocation allowances. And so he said, but I don't know if my partners are going to go for that. And I said, well, are your partners going to go for being the pariah of the Western world? I said, because that's what's going to happen. This is going to be a big deal. And so he agreed to the following, to pay $10,000 relocation to anyone that would leave within 30 days that felt that they couldn't handle the rent increase. And I also told him that he would have to take the rent increase off the board from 60 days to 6 months away, because it was going to be 100%, 138%. And I said it can only be 15%. And I said still there are going to be people that can't make that 15%. And for those that let you know, you offer them $10,000 in relocation that you pay the day that they turn the property over to you. He also had bought and rehabilitated several apartment buildings in the Hyde Park area of Inglewood, and that's been in the news a lot lately. And they're about $1,600 a month. And so those that could afford that, he would allow them to move there with no move-in cost, no first and last, and he would refund their deposit that they put on the apartments that they're in now. And so between those accommodations, the residents were thrilled. They had options, and life rolled on. And so I did this on a case-by-case basis with investors when I'd find out about it, until I ran into one when his manager for the property said he doesn't have to talk to you. He feels it's his right to charge what he wants. I said, well, he better call me by 5 o'clock or he's not going to like what I'm going to do. And when he didn't, that made it real to me. There are people that don't care on forcing people to leave their homes en masse. It's not socially right. I understand. I'm an MBA from Cal Poly. I understand business. But now people have to understand, you have to make it part of your pro forma that there's going to have to be accommodation made for people that can't stay, for you to purchase a property, to make your new mortgage and do your improvements. You have to make that part of your pro forma. And so yesterday, in fact, we had a public hearing, and we're going to do something like this. We're going to cap rents at a maximum of 8% a year. However, any increase over 4%, there's only one increase in a 12-month period. Any increase over 4%, you'll have to pay a relocation based on a matrix that is 5 times the average rent for the size of unit that you have. And so there's a table. And what we wanted to construct something that didn't become politicized, that it would be rule-based. And so people would have some certainty in making decisions. So if you decide to raise rent more than 4%, then here's what you're saying. One, you're going to pay the relocation that you'll have to amortize over whatever you expect to get from that unit in the future. 2, you're going to have to realize that there's going to be a certain number of months it's going to be vacant. And so you're going to lose that money too. And if you want to amortize that out far enough in the future, then it's worth it to you to go to the 8%. Now, if you've owned a building for more than 7 years, and your rents that you charge are 80% or less than the median rent for that size unit in the city of Inglewood, then you can go to the 8% without paying relocation. So what we try to do is distinguish mom and pops from investors, and we wanted to make it clear that there was a cost for investors to come in and raise rents to the point where people couldn't afford them. And so we think that's fair. And by the way the public hearing went, because we had all the media there, they were expecting this big Donnybrook. It was very civilized, and people gave good input. And so that's the status of rents in Inglewood.
All the questions? Good? Yeah, you're awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I got to go.
I know you don't have to go down. You don't want to stay. No, you can.
So, and then who is residential? Who does residential? I mean, we know where the public servants are. They were on the panel. Is there anybody else from the public sector? No. You are?
I used to be on the Venice Neighborhood Council.
Okay. And then any developers in the room? No developer. So then I'm the only architect, I assume. So with that, I am a design principal in a firm that does mainly institutional work, and we are about 120 people, and I'm a big environmentalist. I'm serving on the committee of the environment for the AIA, and I'm also serving on the board of the AIA now. I just got elected, so I'm committed to public service and to making the city a better place. And so I've worked as a design principal on the Natural History Museum renovation and reinvention for 2013 100-year anniversary of that museum. And the proudest part of this project to me was the large garden that was put in and wiped out a big area of parking, and it really introduced a biotope back into the city that hasn't existed, gave a place for public science, and is a big part of kind of the cultural fabric of the city. And so it's really like, it's a great project. I worked on that for 6 years. But there's bigger things that we have to do. I mean, architects can do very little really to change the way we pollute the planet. And so it takes other players. So one of our clients is Kaiser Permanente, and the CEO of Kaiser Permanente, Bernard Tyson, has just committed his company to be carbon neutral by 2020, which is next year, which is unbelievable, because they literally have bought solar energy farms outside and inside the state, and they have invested tremendously in programs that will plant trees and change agriculture forever. And so it is an amazing development that now private industry does that. We built their first platinum certified hospital in the nation, and that was a breakthrough, but that move in policy is really what makes the biggest difference. So how do you feel about climate change? Do you think it's a lost cause? Do you think it's a lost cause? No. Do you think we can win?
Yes.
All right. Well, that's a good crowd. So lots of people think it doesn't even exist, you know, and that's voted elected officials. So I'm a little worried, I must tell you. So I'm trying to be, I'm here because I want to give you my perspective. I want to tell you what you can do in your business, and I want to be a resource to you if you have any questions, okay? So you all remember this, right? Just happened. City of Paradise burned down to the ground in a sweeping motion that you can do nothing about. We will see more of it if we don't make a drastic change. $160 billion were spent and lost in economic value last year just due to climate change. And that doesn't include the recent flooding, okay, that we had in the Midwest. where you are from. And so we are still polluting directly connected to our economic rise on a global level. Right? This is from Mauna Loa. This is scientific data from Scripps Institute. So we're going up. The only place in the country, really, that really has been able to disconnect successfully from economic rise and greenhouse gas emissions output is California. So we're in a place that's very, very progressive and it's wonderful, but it's not enough. So the nation is swept by economic peril from hurricanes and climate catastrophe. If we don't make a change, we're not going to have anymore a sustained economic rise in the economy. I'm convinced of that. And so if you look at scientific data, what is ahead of us, if we don't make drastic change, we're going to have economic downturn that is forever. We will be poor in 2050 if we don't make a change than we are today. So for the first time, an economist has been awarded the Nobel Prize, William Nordhaus, for his policies investigations about carbon tax. He's been advocating that for the last 30 years to do that, to have government policy change. So, and this is the statement, the policy are lagging very, very far behind, miles and miles behind the science what we need to be done. Professor Nord said shortly after learning of the prize, it's hard to be optimistic. And we're actually going backward in the United States with the disastrous policies of the Trump administration. Now, this is coming from a man that is a distinguished professor and a Nobel laureate. And so I want you to consider this, this message. And I don't know if you know about her. She's this schoolgirl, Greta Thunberg, who protests every Friday in front of the house in Sweden, in Stockholm, to make legislators aware that they have to do something and change policy against climate change. And so she is committed, and she's got a global audience now. And that is a wonderful way to change things. And so we've seen unprecedented growth in the urban region of Los Angeles, and part due to the fact that we have a wonderful mayor. But we also have seen growth in the housing market and the real estate values going up. We are now again at 2006 levels. Now that growth was a little bit more organic, and it's not fueled again by mortgages that are just getting given away and issued on a napkin. But so what are we going to do with this richness and wealth? Are we going to invest it in a sustainable city, or are we just going to rake in the profit? So I urge you to partner with companies that are committed to climate change. These are 171 companies have committed to some level of goals at the renewable energy 100%, to be renewable energy 100%. So if you look for a business partner, look not just what profit you can make, look also at their global commitment to climate change and what they can do for the planet. I think it is important for everybody to think that way. And so there is also legislation that you will have to consider. By 2020, all residential construction has to be zero net energy. That means that the house cannot consume more energy than it produces. And that is coming to a real estate market near you. By 2030, that will be true for all new commercial construction. And there is legislation on its way and under investigation, under consideration, that will also will commit investors and real estate owners to retrofit the existing housing stock to meet more aggressive energy targets and reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. So this is something you gotta talk to your clients about, you educate yourself about it, because it will be a cost to them, but it will be also a benefit to all, and a benefit in the end to that client, because their life cycle costs will decrease, and it will mean for them that they have to pay less to operate their buildings. And that's good for everybody. So there's some bills that are on the docket and or have been passed that are important for you to know and understand. So SB 350 and SB 100 are committing California to pass basically to be 100% renewable by 2045. And that Governor Newsom signed that bill, and it is unprecedented on the planet that something like that ambitious has been passed. And so now, in order for your building owners to take real advantage of this and having a building that's really truly just runs on 100% renewable energy, it has to be electrified. So what's important is that your owners turn away from fossil fuels to burn. And another bill that was passed, and I know Mayor John doesn't really like this bill, but I have, and this may be not the form it's going to happen, but we have a huge housing shortage in California. There's 3 million units that we have to build in order to address the demand, and this is business coming to you, if that is, if it in fact holds. So what this means also in my eyes is, it is a cry for densification of the city, which Ron talked about earlier, which is the only policy that will help us actually make this, make a city more our city more sustainable and resilient. The traffic is impossible to handle. I ride the bicycle, so I don't have to deal with that much. But I have a job now in San Diego and a project meeting in Orange County that I have to go to, and it is a disaster. It is, I mean, do you want to do this every day? Lots of people do this every day. And it's like, it's killing me. So, not the only thing that we have to do is build a drought-tolerant garden or put a ton of solar panels in. So there's many, many strategies that can be used to make and be better to the planet. And so Paul Hawken has come up with a book that 260 scientists contributed strategies to that address all sectors of the economy that can be employed and become the basis of government policy. And so I think for us, it is really important that we kind of think about it, what is appropriate for the client or the building or the city that we live in. So with that, this is the big,
What's the name of the book, sir?
It's Paul Hawken, and the book is called Drawdown. Drawdown, which means, you know, we gotta have to make basically our society carbon negative. That means we have to plant more trees and sequester more carbon than we're currently putting out in order to kind of like reverse climate change. It's a very, very difficult thing to do at this point because we're late. But I'm with you. I think we can win. And so I'm here to help you with that. So if you would like to, you know, use me as a resource, I welcome you, and just visit the website of the AAA. The screen shelf has all of the resources that you can ever wish for to educate yourself. And thank you for listening.
You're patient. Yeah. I use this one. Okay. I think that's one.
Now it's working.
Is it working?
Yeah, it's working.
So I just wanted to take one issue with SB 50, and in fact, there may be different schools of thoughts. I don't know if you're aware of Professor Donald Worster, who talks about the environment and resiliency. And from my perspective, densification is a lifestyle choice. There are people who like living in Manhattan, and there are people who don't. But as Professor Alex Wall, I quoted him before, as he wrote in Infinite Suburbia, actually resiliency is dependent on a variety of choices. So the notion of forcing people to live in, and some people are talking about neo-feudalism, workforce housing and that sort of thing, in a more dense area, studies have shown that is not the way to combat climate change, although in theory, if everything were done absolutely correctly, you might save a little. The real thing is you would gain 56% efficiency by just raising the fuel efficiency of vehicles from 25 miles a gallon to 40. And that's actually where the true key to combating climate change lies in, is in weaning ourselves from fossil fuels and moving to alternate energy sources. I will note that SB 50 is, as Zeb Yaroslavsky, former county supervisor, said, it's a real estate bill. That may be good for you, but it's not a housing bill. It's aimed supposedly to create affordable housing, and it uses the notion that the market will solve the problem. Well, if you believe that, maybe you believe that the market will solve the problem of healthcare or something like that. But we know that unfortunately people who rely on a very simplistic version of supply and demand, which is the theory behind the bill, that ultimately it will lead to displacement and other issues which we have in cities, which are actually construction costs of higher buildings are not carbon neutral. They actually take more energy, and so there's two schools of thought on that. But very concisely, I would say, what that would end up doing is it would create more luxury housing. And that may have said that, as for real estate brokers, that might be good. It will do very little to create affordability. And I phrase it this way: if you build more Rolls Royces, that's not going to bring down the price of Priuses. And that's effective.
Is that, though, in fact, really the nature of that bill? I mean, if you read the itemized targeted goals that bill has, it doesn't talk about high-income housing and regulating through the real estate market. That is not the true sense of the bill in my eyes, how I read the current draft. And so I think that is a little bit of a mischaracterization here.
So I'll say I just wrote I think it's probably public record, a 14-page letter to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, because Senator Wiener is accused. He's always invoking Beverly Hills as sort of the bad guys. You know, he's using stereotypes of the city as a bunch of rich Jews, and he's Jewish himself, which is weird. But doesn't take into account the fact that 50% of our city is renters, that 62% of our housing units are multifamily, and that our density levels are already on parity with the urban area of San Francisco as defined by demographer Wendell Cox. San Francisco, by the way...
I don't think it's the city of Beverly Hills that's under attack here.
It is from him, and I can tell you, again, I'm very familiar. You're looking at things maybe from a policy or a scholarly perspective. I'm looking at things from the way I know Sacramento works from 10 years of experience. And he's trying to frame this as a bill that, and again, the 3 million figure has been disputed now by SCAG, but he's suggesting he's attacking the root causes of the affordability problem, because he's saying the solution is ultra-high density near transit. He, as I point out in my letter, he contradicts himself. But the fact of the matter is the real root cause of the housing affordability crisis is income inequality in our country, and in our state specifically. It's also job concentration. So in Silicon Valley, when you have tech companies that are paying all of this money to people who can outcompete other people, it causes displacement. And so this is actually, again, it goes to what I discussed about the tech oligarchs and neo-feudalism. This is actually a way to try and solve it for the tech companies. And you think about it, any kind of blanket upzoning, and there's actually a good article, you probably read it in the planning report by a UCLA professor called Michael Storper that talks about the impacts of blanket upzoning as a blunt tool. What that does is it's a wealth transfer. You're giving away air rights from the public to the private sector. And in conjunction with the 200 other housing bills that are out there in Sacramento, it actually takes away from cities the ability to recapture that value that is created, allowing the developers in this case to profit from it. And we hear these arguments with CEQA all the time as well too. I'm sure you've heard CEQA was what's stopping housing construction, and CEQA was of course designed to protect the environment.
Right.
Yeah. But the same people who are now out against local zoning control, which as I discussed why I feel local control is important, CEQA's next. And
So Mayor, what do you think in your city is actually, I mean, we can talk about SB 50 at length, but I think it is important also to consider that's just one little piece of the stone if we even want to talk about making an impact on the environment. It's not like, it's like you said, transportation is 46% of all greenhouse gas emissions, so that's where we can have a big impact. And so what you as a city mayor see you can do to improve the environmental footprint of Beverly Hills at large.
Here's what, I'm sorry, I think the question is also for Ron.
Right.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, we're part, and I don't know if LA is, I think it is, of a CCA that we helped create, a community choice aggregator that offers our residents the ability to have 100%. It's by default, I think 50 now, but offers residents a chance to have 100% renewable. I look here, when it comes to this, the bad guys, if you will, are these big corporations, unfortunately SoCal Edison, PG&E, that are too big to fail, which from my perspective, PG&E, which is Northern California, Southern California Edison, which are investor-owned utilities, and their goal is to make a profit. And from my perspective, these, if we could figure out ways to spend money more efficiently, these should be public utilities with the goal of providing 100% renewable energy. And so we also have changed our building codes for the future. And those are things that we can successively do. And that's why I said our focus is less growth. I think when you read Donald Worster, Kenneth Boulding, who was an economist, once said that anyone who in a world of finite resources believes that growth can continue forever is either a madman or an economist. Right. Mind you, this man himself was an economist. I would add maybe or a politician. And so I think we need to focus on sustainability. And I completely agree that reducing our carbon footprint is extremely important. And I think the way, as we've heard, electrification, that's the way to do it. Some of these housing bills, again, 200 housing bills out there are fig leaves that are using some theories that if they actually worked would achieve very minimal. I'll tell you what we did in our city. I wish Senator Wiener and other senators would ban fracking. We banned fracking in our city. You can say, well, you don't have oil. Well, we did. We had on our high school, we have had an oil well. We're the only city, I think, in the state that has banned fracking. I believe the state of California should ban fracking. I don't see any bills out there that are making that proposal.
It's a lot. In regards to SB 50, we appreciate Senator Wiener's bold attempts to try to tackle this issue, but we think there still needs to be some work done on it, and we don't formally endorse it at this point.
So you're probably aware that, I know that you're speaking for Mayor Garcetti, but you saw what the council did yesterday. They voted unanimously to oppose SB 50, actually.
Yeah, but I only speak for the mayor's office, and so we, at this point, don't endorse it. So to take a step back, there are certain issues, and everyone has their own lane and their own position, and that's just natural, it's human nature. But there are issues we're dealing with, and that's urbanization, the urbanization of the United States. Like I said earlier, I come from the site selection world, for corporate site selection. I help companies looking to expand, relocate, or consolidate across the nation. I did some international work as well. I was actually involved in a minor extent with trying to help what I would do is that, you know, guys know about the Amazon deal. I would be one of the guys that would try to help my client. I wish Amazon were my client at the time, they weren't. But my clients are looking to go to other places. I would do all of the site selection, data collection, and negotiations with the economic development authorities and negotiations to try to get incentives for the client. That's what I did. Right now, there are more people living in cities than in rural areas. Yes. It's without saying, okay? And this is a trend that's going to continue to happen. In my presentation, I said that we're going to increase within the city, 600,000 residents are going to move to LA. That's LA City, not LA County. So right now we're at 4 million residents. We're going to be to 4.6 million residents in the city. We're already at 10 million residents in the county. So just picture the increase at the county level as well. And at the same time, we have this and we have a shortage of housing. So there are issues that we have to tackle. And there's no silver bullet, or else we would have solved it by now. You know, if it was easy, then it would be solved. It's not easy. So it's going to be a complex issue that at all levels, there are going to be healthy debates going back and forth. And what I'm hoping is that during this healthy debates, our policymakers come up with a perfect solution, but it probably won't be the case. Whatever solution they come up with, there's always going to be some detractors. But from the city standpoint, our mayor does see homelessness as a driving issue. And that is something that when you look at what we're dealing with now, snapshot in time, 2019, as we are marshaling all of the resources we have to deal with this issue, we're dealing with that at the same time as we're dealing with, you know, increased density, which is what we want, but also increased population flow. Also, we're dealing with the gentrification and displacement issue with programs like opportunity zones coming into place. And so what we're doing is that we're going to combat that and try to put forth the types of projects that we would like to see as a city. So SB 50 can be controversial. I still think that there's some research that needs to be done on that. But I think that all in all of us can agree that the homelessness issue is huge for the state of California. And that's something that is a blight to all of us. And we're going to have to work together at some point to find ways to solve that. In regards to realtors, this urbanization is really good for you guys because that's going to be more clients. The increase in housing stock and the increase of condos coming on the market, you know, you may not have to sell as many single-family homes, but you have to start selling condos and things of that sort. So these are all opportunities that I think are really going to help you. When I see 600,000 new residents coming to LA, I see that's the cha-ching for realtors, that you can take advantage of this influx of population. Because I know plenty of other places around the country that wish they had this issue. They have population decreases that put a different type of strain on them. So that's all I want to say.
And if I may just add, I think Mayor Garcetti's office is very kind towards Senator Wiener. I won't make any bones about it because I've been following him for a couple of years, and I have actually in touch with people who know him from his home district of San Francisco, which actually the Board of Supervisors there voted to oppose it. So, you know, someone who, you know, in his own backyard they opposed it. I find he's extremely, in his methods, he may be personable, but in general he's disingenuous and he's arrogant. And I believe he's an opportunist. I think, to paraphrase Gore Vidal, he's given opportunism a bad name. But quite frankly, the solution to the housing crisis and to homelessness is not luxury condos in Beverly Hills. It's not going to trickle down. That's absolutely not. You want affordability, create affordability. And we're supportive of policies that would actually...
Again, you're phrasing it in a way that I cannot get behind. It is not a fair statement to say that. In my eyes. So I just want to put this out there. So
well,
it is absolutely essential. So what is the city of Beverly Hills doing to address affordable housing?
We're working directly with nonprofit affordable housing developers who we should be working with.
So where are you going to build it in the city?
So
have you identified sites? Have you taken any steps to provide affordable houses
Absolutely.
in the city of Beverly Hills.
Absolutely. And you know, our situation is different from other ones because of the price of land in our city, and which is another issue, is that affordability needs to be addressed on a regional basis. Well, that's not allowed right now.
It is a very, like, I'm dealing with this, I'm serving on the neighborhood councils in Hollywood Hills, in my own community, and I've heard on the neighborhood councils protesting any development, and particularly this bill has triggered such contention in the neighborhoods where I'm like wondering how are we gonna get people off the streets if we don't allow for sustainable, affordable housing, because it's always not in my backyard.
Let me give you the
okay,
answer.
That's what happens.
I'll give you the answer to that. So SB 50, as said, is a market rate bill. It suggests that the unfettered people who like Ayn Rand out there, it's their dream. The market's going to solve this. And it will trickle down. What I think we need to do is have targeted policies. And by the way, studies have shown that the NIMBYism reduces significantly when it comes to nonprofit. When you have good projects that want to be a part of the community, and I think the notion of a lot of these groups that are opposing it, that blanket upzoning, oppose the wealth transfer aspect of it as well.
I have one question to ask you, because I would like we focus on something else. Just one moment. We didn't speak. I heard you speaking, but we didn't go more inside the problem of transportation and health. What do you have? What do you think about that?
So we're looking. Everyone talks about TOD. I'm sure you've heard it, and you know there's a discussion about whether it's better to have transit nodes of density. Which I'm not against density. I think downtown LA is a perfect place for it. There are people. You know, Manhattan is great, but of course Manhattan's not affordable. So you can't equate density with affordability. I think that's a problem. I think we have to look at new paradigms of transportation. We're hopefully going to work with MIT to develop something called an AOD handbook. AOD is autonomous-oriented development. We're working on an autonomous shuttle system that would provide point-to-point on-demand mobility that wouldn't tie people to fixed rail, and I think that's good. It offers more options, but we're not even looking at that. We're tied into these old notions that people are going to, certainly in Southern California, use public transportation in the way they do elsewhere. And I lived in Europe most of my adult life. I lived in Stockholm, and I almost only used public transportation there. But anybody who, you know, our problem is that you look right now, let's say you would put into Google Maps that you want to go to Southgate or to Inglewood, and it tells you how long it takes you by public transportation. You know, it'll take you maybe a half hour, or in traffic an hour to drive there. But if it takes you that, it will take you using public transportation 2 hours. I was in London about a month ago, and I wanted to go someplace, and actually public transportation was quicker than if I had been driving there. We need to, we maybe will never get there, but we need to get pretty close. If it's going to take double the time, people are still going to use cars. Now, again, we're dealing with several issues, because in theory, if you can, you know, vehicle miles traveled aren't as bad if it's completely carbon free, and if the technology gets there. So that's a separate issue. But in terms of where do people want to live and urban planning, and I'm very interested in urban planning, that's much of what we do as a city. We need to move on from a paradigm that's based on technology that is end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th, and look at what is coming. And it's not just autonomous vehicles, it's drones, it's all of these things, and that's going to have an impact on the way that we plan cities, and it should. And the weird thing is there is nothing out there. Again, we've talked with Professor Alan Berger at MIT, and he's very interested in working with us just because we brought up the idea, and we have our municipal autonomous shuttle system, on an autonomous-oriented development handbook. We need something like that, and there are people out there who are interested in it, like at USC, Professor Antonio Bento, who is the head of the Sustainability Solutions Center there, and we need to be working with them. But we also I think can't be naive when we're looking at the political world, and I'm very chastened about the motivations of people for writing bills. And unfortunately, we live in a political system, as opposed to Europe, where you can limit donations and all of that, where it's all about the money. And I think we need to have a high level of scrutiny about what people's motivations are, and then actually think for ourselves. And so, to answer your question, I do think we need to be moving on to something that no one else is doing. We're hopefully going to do that, and I hope other cities will join us too from an urban planning perspective.
And thank you for putting in the bike lane on Santa Monica Boulevard.
I want a bike lane on Olympic as well.
No, I was
concerning the health.
Concerning health?
Yeah, in
downtown. There are certain things that, so originally I'm from around Flint, Michigan, okay? And we all know what happens with Flint. There are certain things in regards to public infrastructure that we have a responsibility to make sure that it's adequate, make sure that we do what we can to ensure community benefit and community health. One of the reasons for this push towards, especially we all know about Measure M, and this push towards manned transit and things of that sort, is so we can take more cars off the road. I think all of us would be well suited to get some of the cars off the road. But there is a health benefit to that. Obviously, you'll have a lower carbon footprint. We're already doing the same thing for buildings, which you spoke to, in regards to trying to get to a net zero carbon emission coming from buildings and things of that sort for new construction. We're already making a push towards solar. DWP has programs that they're implementing to try to deal with this issue. And again, it's one of those deals where we have to have all hands on deck. And part of those hands to be on deck includes public transportation and mass transit.
Thank you so much. So thank you, Ron. Thank you, John. Thank you, Fabian. Thank you so much for all you did today. So now we're gonna have a lunch, and please, they're gonna stay with us, of course, and to get lunch, and you can ask them questions. Thank you so much.